hated Beyonce's Lion King The Gift album. And no, it wasn't the music. The music was good. I just felt like it wasn't her place to make African music. But wait, around the same time, I didn't have a problem with Chris Brown or Ed Sheeran doing Afrobeat. So what was it? Am I a hypocrite? Am I a sexist? I don't know, but my ex did tell me that I like to mansplain a lot. So in the spirit of mansplaining, I developed a 3-factor test for determining the difference between cultural appropriation and cultural appreciation. I'm just kidding. I didn't develop the cultural appreciation test because I like to mansplain. I did it because I'm an actual authority in the subject of media and culture. My name is Nenebi Tony. I've worked in the entertainment and media scene in Ghana for 20 years before moving to the US. I wrote a book called Everything That Happened and the People Who Made It about the entertainment scene in Ghana and the rest of West Africa. So I'm going to apply my 3-factor test to Beyonce's Lion King The Gift album to see if Beyonce appropriated African culture or appreciated African culture. And the 3 factors test, I call it the ABC of cultural appreciation. A for acknowledgement, B for bring along, C for capital allocation. Acknowledgement, did you acknowledge the culture you are borrowing from? Bring along, did you bring somebody from the culture with you when you borrow from the culture? C, capital allocation, which I think is the most important. Did somebody make money from that culture? So let's get right into it. The Lion King movie. Fun fact, if you didn't know this, Beyonce's Lion King The Gift album is not the official soundtrack for the Lion King movie, which she starred in 2019. The official soundtrack was Disney's repurposing of the original soundtrack from the original Lion King from 1994. So I want to talk about the original soundtrack from 1994 and how it relates to cultural appropriation. So the story for the Lion King movie is a Shakespearean telling of an African story. So basically, Disney took Shakespeare and African landscape and joined them together to create the Lion King, right? And fun fact, nobody from the continent of Africa was directly involved in the making of the Lion King movie. Nobody in the creative committee that created the Lion King movie was of African descent, as far as we know. I mean Africa, not African American. And the soundtrack for the Lion King, the 1994 soundtrack, had only one African involved in its creating. That is Lebo M, who is South African. And Lebo M came in because Hans Zimmer, who is the scores person for the Lion King, thought that they needed an authentic African voice on the project. As far as anybody knows, Lebo M was the only African involved in the creation of the Lion King. So that means that acknowledgement, yes, Disney acknowledged that the story is set in Africa. Bring along one person. So did they really bring along anyone? Capital allocation. They went on a trip to Africa, so maybe they paid for stuff when they were there. That's not the type of capital allocation I'm talking about. So right off the bat, Disney doesn't meet my ABC test, right? And Beyonce did something different. When Beyonce came to got involved in the Lion King project, Hans Zimmer, who did the original score for the movie 1994, was doing the score again for the movie in 2019. So Beyonce wasn't involved in the music making process. But I've noticed something about Beyonce. Beyonce is a capitalist activist. And what is a capitalist activist? Activism that involves protests, movements, and speaking truth to power is important. But we live in a capitalist society. So money activism is also important. And that is one area Beyonce have shown so much. Beyonce have put on so many people from so many different cultures money-wise. Okay, so let me use the ABC test to charge Beyonce before the Lion King project. Hey, in 2011, Beyonce put out the album 4. And the album 4 had a song called End of Time. And the End of Time song had some drums that sounded African and had some instrumentation that sounded like they were Fela inspired. And Beyonce could have just said, yeah, I was inspired by like what American celebrities always said, tribal culture or African culture. But no, Beyonce specifically said the song End of Time was inspired by Fela Kuti, the godfather of Afrobeat. So right off the bat, Beyonce, without anybody asking, acknowledged the African influence and specifically pointed to a specific African that people can go look at if they want to see what she was inspired by. And there was another song on the album called Girls Who Run the World. And for the video for Who Run the World, Beyonce employed the services of two Mozambican boys in the early 2010s, music producers in the continent of Africa started experimenting with FL Studio. And what they were doing was they were using electronic plugins to play African instrumentation. So for example, in Ghana, we had a movement called Azonto. And Azonto was people using FL plugins to play music that is the traditional music of fishing communities in Ghana. So Azonto was a modern electronic dance version of traditional Ghanaian fishing music. And this Azonto and other electronic dance, let me call it African electronic dance, this African electronic dance music movement sparked a wave of dancers. Dancers from different African countries were coming together to make dance videos and posting it on YouTube. So in Ghana, there was a whole bunch of Azonto dance videos. In Nigeria, there were their version. In Mozambique, different African countries. So basically, African dancers were creating TikTok challenges before even TikTok existed, right? So in 2011, when Beyonce was doing Who Ran the World Girls, she probably saw some of these videos on YouTube. And what I've noticed happens is whenever people in the Western world see creative things from the continent of Africa, they just take it. Pablo Picasso is credited for creating Cubism. And Pablo said Cubism was inspired by African art. Which African art? Which country? Which specific tribe of African art inspired Cubism? Beyonce didn't do I created Cubism. So Beyonce found a Tofo dance group online and brought them and paid for them to teach choreography for her Girls Run the World video. So, one, she acknowledged the movement of African dance happening in Africa. Two, she brought along people from Africa, and three, she paid them for their work. So, ABC test, Beyonce passed with flying colors. And for the next album, which was the self-titled album, Beyonce did something even bigger. So I know this because I've done a TED Talk before. When you do a TED Talk, TED owns the recordings of your talk and you own the writing and performance of your talk. So if somebody wants to use the recording of your talk, they can contact TED and get clearance from TED, and they can contact you or not, right? So sometimes people could just do the bare minimum, contact TED and satisfy it. And then when you take them to court, they can always bring out the fact that I contacted TED, and that will be a long litigation. But Beyonce didn't do this. What Beyonce did was, on the song Flawless, you could have said Beyonce sampled Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie for the song Flawless, and that would have been okay, but she didn't do that. She credited Chimamanda as a featured artist. And how is that different? So she used Chimamanda's name, image, and likeness, which means that she paid Chimamanda more. So when you sample somebody, you pay them, but when you feature them, sometimes it comes with more money because you are using their brand, right? And Chimamanda was credited twice. So she's credited as a writer, so she's getting publishing check, and she's credited as a performer, so she's getting master's check. We all know the difference between publishing and masters thanks to Taylor Swift and her beef with her label, right? So by crediting Chimamanda as a featured artist, Beyonce didn't just pay her her worth, she paid her double her worth. I said double her worth because Chimamanda wasn't doing music. Chimamanda had no intention to do music. But now she's a featured music artist, so double her worth. So basically, before Beyonce came to the Lion King project, she already have what I will call built-in trust with the African community that she does right by African creators and by African creatives. So right off the bat, Beyonce was supposed to have my trust, but why didn't she have my trust? Remember earlier I said I'm a writer. So I'm about to tell a story. Bear with me. It will make sense at the end. In 2019, summer 2019, I started working for my mom. My mom has a huge retail business in my hometown in Ghana. She has a supermarket, but the government of Ghana credits it as a mall for reasons I won't get into. So my mom has a mall. And I was working for my mom, and I used to go to the gym before coming to work. So my mom would get to work before me. And on the morning Beyonce's Lion King album came out, I got to work from the gym, and the first thing my mom said to me was, "It is settled. Shatta Wale is the dancehall king." And I'm like, "Yo, mom, what are you talking about?" And she's like, "Beyonce said Shatta Wale is the dancehall king, so Shatta Wale is the dancehall king." I'm like, first and foremost, ma, how do you know Beyonce? And two, how does Beyonce get to determine who is the dancehall king of Ghana or Africa? What my mom was talking about is this. From when I was a teenager, I used to work with a dancehall artist in Ghana called Samini. And Samini, from his second album, called himself the African dancehall king. And later on, Shatta Wale started claiming the dancehall king throne too. So Shatta Wale also started calling himself dancehall king. So there was a conversation about who is the dancehall king, Samini or Shatta Wale. And I used to work with Samini, right? So of course, I think Samini is the dancehall king. My mom loves Shatta Wale. So my mom thinks Shatta Wale is the dancehall king. I remember telling my mom once that, yo, I make money with Samini. You need to respect my business. So when my mom was telling me that Shatta Wale is the dancehall king, she was using Beyonce to buttress a point. And I believe that rubbed me the wrong way. So before I even heard Beyonce's album, I'm like, trash, I hate this album. I believe that because of that, I didn't give the Lion King album a fair hearing. But I like some songs on the album. I like Water with Pharrell. I like Mood Forever. Mood Forever will be my mood forever because Jay-Z is my favorite rapper together with Kanye. And so even though I like some songs on the album, I didn't like the album. But if I didn't have a little beef with my mom, I probably would have appreciated the album more. And this is what I probably would have gotten from the album. A, Acknowledgement. Beyonce said, and I quote, "I want to make sure we found the best talent from Africa. Don't just use the sound and do my interpretation of it." So from Acknowledgement, Beyonce said the Lion King, the Gift album she created, she used the best talent from Africa to create it. And she called it her gift to the continent of Africa. And I don't know when and how, but Beyonce seems to have a huge love for the continent of Africa. And she thought this album her opportunity to express her love. And she didn't express her love by appropriating the culture. She expressed her love by acknowledging that there are talented people in the continent of Africa that I need to bring with me to do this. So she brought along the people like Wizkid, Burna Boy, Tiwa Savage, Yemi Alade, and from Ghana, Shatta Wale, to make this gift. And the people she brought were paid for the project. So A, acknowledge that there is talent and gift in Africa. B, brought people from Africa. And 3, paid them to create this work. Just with those tests, Beyonce passed the cultural appreciation test. And I've seen so many different artists try to do things with the aim of promoting Africa or trying to give gifts to Africa and do it the wrong way. Let me give you an example. Bono, right? Bono have been doing anti-poverty and pro-Africa campaign for a very long time. So in 2009, when Barack Obama became president, Barack Obama visited Ghana in July 2009. There was a lot of conversation in the US media about why is Ghana Barack Obama's first stop in Africa, because his dad is from Kenya, and 2, what is Ghana? And I believe that the reason why Obama chose Ghana was because a few months before his trip, Ghana had just had a heavily contested close call election, which resulted in no violence. And in a lot of places in the world, January 6th, elections that are that close can lead to violence. So Ghana having a close election that didn't result in violence was something that Obama said he wanted to highlight, that Ghana was a beacon of democracy in the world. He said that in his speech, right? So that was Obama's reason for choosing Ghana as his first destination in Africa. And when Obama was going to Africa, the New York Times decided to run a story on the day Obama was in Ghana. And guess who New York Times chose to write the story about Ghana when Obama was visiting Ghana? Your guess is right. The guy who knows no boundary. Bono of U2. I said a guy who knows no boundary because he put his song on our iPhone without asking our consent. So New York Times chose Bono to write an article about Ghana. And Bono's article about Ghana was very beautiful. It was very positive and it was well written. I have nothing against Bono's article about Ghana except for one thing. Bono said in his article that the most popular music sound in Ghana is jazz. I knew what Bono meant by that, but he was wrong. So in Ghana, we have a music genre called high life. And high life is the Ghanaian interpolation of jazz. I don't know whether high life was directly influenced by jazz, but high life sounds like jazz, right? And in the 1970s, when Ghanaian artists were signed by American labels and British labels and German labels, the Ghanaian artists who were signed by these Western labels were promoted as jazz artists. The same way, when Bob Marley was signed by a British label, Bob Marley was promoted as a rock artist. But we all know Bob Marley is not a rock artist, he is a reggae artist. But the way to explain reggae to the Western mind was to explain it as rock. And the way to explain her life to the Western mind was to explain it as jazz, right? So that is what Bruno meant by jazz is the biggest music genre in Ghana. But he was wrong because that's not what we call it. So he could have just said the biggest music genre in Ghana is high life music and explain with just one line the jazz connection, right? So because Bono, one, wasn't Ghanaian or didn't know Ghana, even though he visited a few times, two, didn't bring along somebody from Ghana to fact check him, and three, New York Times wasn't willing to pay somebody from Ghana to write that article. They end up cultural appropriating Obama's visit to Ghana and not appreciating Ghanaian culture the right way. So Beyonce is an example of all Western artists who want to partake in African culture. I'm not saying don't do it. I love that African culture and African music is in the light right now, and everybody from anywhere in the world is trying to tap into our sound. What I'm saying is, Beyonce is an example of how to do it the right way. So, thank you for listening to my views on the subject of cultural appreciation, and let me know your thoughts on my thoughts. What do you think about my cultural appreciation test? What do you think about my thoughts on Beyonce passing my cultural appreciation test? What do you think about my thoughts on Bono failing my cultural appreciation test? I'd like to hear from you. And also, please like and subscribe to my channel. It's a small channel. I started it just this year in February. And I think that I know so much I can share to the world. And in order for YouTube to, recommend it to more people, I need your engagement with me. I appreciate you for sticking around and listening to me to the end. Let me know you listen to me to the end by commenting. Thank you.